Hello, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural SaltStack Support webinar. Thank you so much for making some time to join us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you might be, and listening in about our new support offerings here. Really happy to have a couple of people join me today. My name is Dave Reardon. I'm the Vice President of Sales at SaltStack, and I've got here with me in the room Thomas Hatch, who is the founder and CTO of SaltStack. And we've also got Stefan Looney, who is the Associate Director of Platform Support and Automation for Sterling Backcheck on the line with us here, and really grateful for both of their time, to join us to talk through this. So really what we wanted to do is give you a bit of background on sort of this journey that we've been on to formally announce and launch our support offerings. And to really kick that off, we wanted to give Tom just a few minutes here to discuss sort of the evolution, of Salt and where we've been and sort of where we're going. And then from there, we'll have Stefan talk about his experience with using SaltStack Support specifically. Stefan's been a great supporter of Salt for a long time on the open source, and certainly has had some good experiences with the support offerings as of late as well, and we'll share those stories with you. And we'll wrap up with looking at what the actual offerings are and just some other housekeeping things around SaltConf and some of the other things that you on the call might be interested in hearing about. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Thomas Hatch here to talk through the evolution here of SaltStack and the support offerings.
Now, when we go back in time and look at where Salt came from and what the intent of Salt is, we've got a great little timeline here. I started writing Salt in my basement in February of 2011, and my original plan and view of Salt was that if I made a system which could allow for highly modular management and monitoring and control of systems, that we'd be able to build substantially complex and powerful automation tools on top of that. And so if we take a quick look at the timeline here, Salt was started as an open source project in February of 2011. The remote execution technology was the foundation of Salt and still is. And then started working on Salt configuration management in May of 2011. We've taken a very methodical approach to making Salt very robust and powerful. It took about 6 months before the configuration management systems were what we would call ready to at least be openly discussed. And throughout 2012, it was a lot of software development and then the incorporation of SaltStack in August of that year. And so as we continue to grow the company and also grow the project, the end of 2012 is when we see additions like the Salt Reactor, the event system being introduced inside of Salt, as well as bringing together this event-driven model. And at this point, we've got a much more robust and full view of the foundation of what Salt is. And then we move forward into 2013 when we introduced things like Salt SSH, and the SaltStack company continues to grow and become larger. Now, as we move on and look at what the elements of SaltStack are, and the elements of what we feel create a successful open source company. Creating open source companies can be a very, very tricky task. The business model needs to work for the specific company, and it needs to work for the specific buyers and users of that technology, and it needs to be something which is commercially viable. And as we've come back and looked at Salt, it's been made to be highly modular, have many components that are attached into it, and subsequently we're able to layer all of these components to build very powerful automation solutions that go beyond what single point solutions have. And so as we move forward, we see that Salt's open source technology builds an automation foundation. And in this open source technology, we have all the modularity, the remote execution system of SALT. We have the event reactor system, which allows us to create autonomous rules. We have the beacon system, which introduces and manages monitoring systems. We have the engines, which allow us to do very complicated task orchestration and very complicated rule evaluation. We're able to do things like communicate with systems over TCP, UDP, or SSH, making our communication channels extremely robust and giving a vast array of optionality with respect to network topology and utilization, whether or not we're running in an agent or agentless mode. Our configuration management system has grown to easily be, we feel, the most robust and powerful configuration management system in the industry today. And then, of course, all of our cloud and virtualization integration components. Again, all of this technology is open source. We are still one of the most widely contributed to and one of the largest open source development communities in the world. That has certainly not changed as our development community has continued to grow and as we have seen SALT become the backbone of more and more applications and infrastructures in the world. One of the great benefits that we have seen, for instance, in last year of 2015, is a significant rise in the adoption of SALT and also the approval of SALT in large organizations. Now, the elephant in the room, of course, is that the company name is SaltStack, Inc., which means that we are in this to make money. SaltStack is not a foundation. Now, when I first introduced that I was going to make a corporation around SaltStack, I received a very, very positive response from the open source community. It showed that there was a company in place that was going to be able to offer commercial support, commercial services, as well as commercial products which would ensure the longevity and health of the company. And so what I want to talk about is what those support and services look like and what the business model looks like. Now, the benefit of the open source software is that it allows us to create a platform which gets a great deal of visibility and use around the world, as well as allows us to get right into the heart of the infrastructure problems. It means that the software which we have to manage infrastructure is very much alive, and it is alive in the sense that there are many, many people looking at it, using it, and developing it. But so as we look at this, again, from a business model perspective, that open source software becomes the foundation of SaltStack's business. And on top of that open source software is where we were able to then introduce our new support offerings. And this allows us to have support on top of the open source distribution of SALT. That commercial support allows us to respond to your needs in a very timely manner. Instead of you filing an issue on GitHub and we get to it as quickly as we can, these are support SLAs which ensure that we are going to respond in a timely manner and do everything that we can to solve your issues. On top of the SaltStack support, we do have the enterprise offerings and SaltStack professional services. The benefit that we see here also is that we have a ramp which allows us to offer the best products and the best services to the people who need them. So as we go in and we see that every infrastructure is different, which is one of the hallmarks of SALT software, that not only is every infrastructure different in the way in which every infrastructure's applications are deployed different, but also what their needs are as a company differ dramatically. And again, these support offerings are intended to widen the companies that we are able to give support to, and widen the companies that we are able to establish strong relationships with and benefit their installations. All right, and with that, I believe I will turn it back over to Dave Reardon.
Okay. Yes. Thanks very much, Tom, for the background there and the introduction to why we've kind of gotten to this point in time as a company relative to making this a formalized offering. There are a number of you every day that are downloading Salt and using Salt for various projects. Whether that's just starting out exploring Salt to go do a proof of concept, or you're all the way to the point where you're using it in production, at massive scale. And with that, there are lots of reasons why you would want to engage with us. Whether that is doing architecture reviews, making sure that the way that you're using Salt and the way that you've deployed Salt in your environment is the best way to do it, using best practices that we see, whether that is, if it is a production-based system and you want 24/7 support if something happens, that you have that lifeline back into SaltStack to make sure that your issues get taken care of in a timely manner. And like Tom said, it might just be simple things like making sure that your bugs or your requests get prioritized and pushed up the ladder quickly to get fixed inside of SaltStack, in a timely manner. And so Stefan Looney, who I mentioned as we started the call, again, who is Associate Director of Platform Support and Automation at Sterling Backcheck, is one of our first support customers, and has already had the opportunity to really dive into support and see what that's all about. I'll let you tell him that story, but first I will allow him to introduce himself a bit, and also Sterling Backcheck. So Stefan, if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to give a quick overview of you and how Sterling Backcheck.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. So again, I'm Stefan Looney. I work at Sterling Backcheck out of our Atlanta office. We're the one of the industry leaders in the background investigation space. So we provide background investigation services for organizations around the globe. I had the opportunity a little over a year ago to kick off an infrastructure and process automation team at Sterling Backcheck to do a kind of an assortment of things. So we, wanted a tool set to do, code deployments for our in-house apps. We wanted a tool set that could lay down patches on our Linux boxes, patch our Windows boxes, do one-off deployments, et cetera, help us with some compliance and some auditing and things like that. And so I had previous exposure to SaltStack, but Salt, when compared to all the other tools and making kind of a global decision on this standardizing on a tool set, Salt was the only one that had, the total package, the Windows support, the Linux support, the support for cloud providers and things like that. And then, it was one of the only ones that not only had a commercial offering, but also had some serious open source backing. So that's really kind of in a nutshell of who we are and
yep.
Why we picked Salt, right?
Yeah, great. And just quickly, in terms of, your first introduction to Salt and where you first heard about Salt, when did that happen, and how did you first kind of get wind of who we were?
So a couple of years ago, I had no exposure to Salt, never heard of it. I thought it was just something that you put on your potatoes to make them not taste bad. Yeah. We were actually replacing a tool set called BladeLogic by BMC Software, and we were exploring Puppet, and I really didn't care for Puppet's development mentality, so it just seemed to me like it was centered around the developer, and specifically a Ruby developer. So it's, two things I'm not. I'm not a developer, and I'm not a Ruby developer. And no one on our team at that time at my previous company had that level of knowledge required to make it successful. So I started doing a little bit of research and trying to find a competitor to Puppet that had support for Windows and Linux, and had support for patching in cloud and all the aforementioned items, right? All the things that Tom kind of went over a little while ago. And so I stumbled on SaltStack and then decided, I'm gonna do kind of a bake-off. I'm gonna spin up a couple of different tools: Chef, Ansible, Puppet, and Salt. I'm gonna see which one I can get online the fastest. The other tools, I never really got them to do my initial use case, which was to deploy a 2008 domain controller. In about 45 minutes, I had Salt set up, configured, and had deployed a couple of 2008 domain controllers, and just fell in love at that point.
Great, awesome. And then you had some exposure to SaltConf and had a couple of people out to SaltConf and had some exposure there as well. Am I correct?
Yeah. So last year was my first SaltConf. I believe that was Salt's second SaltConf, right? And it was just a great event. The networking was incredible. Just learning how people are using Salt really helped me define our DevOps model. We really didn't have a DevOps model per se, and just learning how some of the other the other companies that are Salt customers, contributors, et cetera, were using the tool really helped us develop that model. Also really helped me kind of think outside the box. Going through some of the training, I learned, beacons were new last year, and I actually learned how to implement those and how to leverage beacons. It was just a priceless experience. And so we're actually going to send most of the team out this year.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So, obviously, you went on this journey to find the appropriate tool set to replace your legacy, some of the legacy tool sets that you had. You had some experience with, testing out a whole bunch of different things and selected Salt. Salt then became part of the Sterling Backcheck infrastructure. Then, you became a customer. You became, a support customer and engaging with this at that level. And can you kind of explain what had happened once you became the customer and sort of the journey after that happened?
Sure. Yeah. So originally we just kind of downloaded Salt. We threw it on a Linux box and just kind of started running with it. Our first use case was actually just to do some code deployments. We've got, some custom in-house apps that we do our own development. We have our own development teams. And so we want to kind of create this separation of duties for some of our standards that we have to adhere to. And, the code deployment process before was extremely manual, labor intensive, and, a lot of, I don't want to say there were a lot of errors in the deployment, but there was a lot of potential for errors, right? So we wanted to remove that human element, throw in some SaltStack and in the process. And so we did that. We had a huge success, and then we decided, we're just going to wrap our entire process for patching, for compliance, for application deployment, for just accessing consoles, right? We're going to roll SaltStack around all of that and make it the gateway. And we quickly realized that we needed to reach out to Salt for more than just the standard stuff, the standard support you can get on GitHub, right? There was some proprietary conversations that we needed to have. There were, that 24/7 support that we had to have. If we ran into a problem, we needed somebody to actually pick up a phone and call, not get on IRC and chat with, John 123 from Tokyo, right? We really needed somebody to call. And so we bought the Salt, Salt Enterprise Support, and just quickly started just reaching out with, hey, we're thinking about this architecturally. Hey, we're going to do this. What's Salt's best practice? And so, it took less than 30 days for Salt to just become an extension of our team. And it's been priceless, absolutely priceless.
Awesome. And then, from a standpoint of, engaging with, support for any sort of, urgent issues, any experience there that you care to highlight or talk about?
Sure. So I'll share a couple of recent things that kind of came to mind. One of them was kind of early. Well, one's not so recent, one's recent, but one that came on kind of early. We had a specific use case where we needed to quickly spin up some virtual machines in VMware, and we needed to migrate some virtual machines from one data center to another. And the version of Salt that we were running then had support, quote unquote, coming, but it wasn't fully vetted out yet. So we placed a call to support, got support on the phone, and within about 45 minutes, we were provisioning virtual machines in the cloud, in our in-house cloud. And so that was absolutely phenomenal. We'd been fighting with it for about a week and a half trying to get it working. We weren't real familiar with the Salt cloud model and how all of that laid down. So Salt support took the time to explain to us the difference between the cloud profiles, the providers, the drivers, et cetera, behind all of that. So that was really nice. And it's actually that knowledge gave us the ability to create some of our own for some custom cloud providers that Salt doesn't support yet. So that was absolutely crucial, vital to our VMware success with Salt. And then more recently, we took it upon ourselves to do some upgrading and some migrating. And as a result, we actually took our Salt infrastructure down unintentionally. And so we had to, again, quickly call support on a weekend. And within, I'm going to say about 20 minutes, we had a human on the phone talking to us. And within an hour, we had root cause and a clear line to a fix. And so, had we reached out in the beginning, we probably could have avoided the outage altogether. But it was absolutely nice to just be able to call somebody and say, we need help. And we got help and got a fix.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Stefan, for sharing your background and your experience with Salt, your journey, if you will, with Salt, and then your experience here with engaging with our support. Really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Absolutely.
You bet. So I'm gonna switch gears here and talk a little bit about what support actually gets you. So if you become a SaltStack customer, there are really several elements to what support is, and really it's been created based off of what you all have been asking for from us. So it is access to the Salt Brain Trust, if you will, but that comes in a lot of different flavors. That might mean calling on a Saturday. That might mean us coming in doing annual health checks, making sure that the deployment of Salt is doing what it's supposed to do for you. That might mean doing specific training with your group or your team or you individually, and that's all incorporated into the SaltStack support offerings. And so when we bring those to market, there's really three separate offerings that we have, and they're annual subscription offerings. They start with a basic support all the way up to a premium support, and really the basic support is just that. It's a web portal that allows you to submit issues, submit questions, et cetera. You will get a same-day response there, but it is all web-based and not a live person on the phone. There are trainings that are included with that as well, so some passes to our online virtual training, and then some SaltConf tickets as well. And then if you move to priority support, it's the web portal plus it's a 24/7 response, tied to SLAs via the phone, as well as trainings, and then we layer in some of these annual health checks. So we'll either do it remotely or come on site and review the Salt infrastructure and make sure that, again, it's deployed the way that you had hoped it would be deployed and doing the things that you want it to do. And then if you move up to our premium support level, we just really extend that out. The SLA gets a little bit better in terms of response time. We include quarterly health checks versus just the annual health checks. There also is a option there for including a technical account manager or TAM that's dedicated to your account specifically and looking after all the things that you're doing with Salt. And so in the event that you do have issues or you do have questions specifically, there's someone dedicated here internally that knows your infrastructure and knows your deployment of Salt intimately. And then will be helpful in prioritizing and escalating things as need be as well. And so, we've got a lot of different users of Salt coming on board with these different support tiers. It really kind of depends on where you are on your journey with Salt. If you're just starting out, basic might be the way to go. If you're more advanced and you've got it in production and you're managing tens of thousands of nodes at scale, obviously a premium support package would probably be more beneficial there. So they're priced based off of per node pricing. So the number of nodes that you're managing is then associated with the pricing for these different support tiers. And we'd be happy to have a discussion with any of you on the phone about what that might look like for your infrastructure and your deployment of Salt. But nonetheless, they're available to you. So if you're an open source user today, you can engage with us on various different levels. You can engage with us with support. You can engage with us just with training. You can engage with us just with professional services, or you can buy one of these packages that would include all of that. Of course, we have our SaltStack Enterprise offering as well, and SaltStack Enterprise is a paid subscription model that includes a graphical user interface of Salt, and we're getting ready to release a new version of that here soon. And we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks. But that also includes obviously support from that as well. So that's really the offerings and the background around support, why we've embarked on this journey and why we've gotten to where we are today. So with that, kind of wrap up on the support discussion and give you a quick reminder here that we do have our annual SALT conference that is in April of this year in Salt Lake City, Utah, the 19th through the 21st. It's at the Grand America Hotel in downtown Salt Lake City, a great venue. Many of you on the call have probably attended. Stefan certainly has. And right now you can register, and there's a number of different ways to get discounted offerings, whether that is free pre-conference training if you book a room at the hotel that we're actually holding the conference in. There's an early bird discount that's available that ends in February, and then there's buy three, get one free. And so you can go check out the registration at our website, and then you can also see the lineup of speakers so far at SaltConf and see what's happening there. But hopefully this was informative to you today. Hopefully you were able to understand better what we're offering from a support perspective. Certainly would love to have conversations with any of you if you want to dive a little bit deeper, and hope to see many of you out at SaltConf. So wanted to say thank you again to Stefan Looney from Sterling Backcheck for sharing his Salt story and spending his valuable time with us and with you really today to understand what's happening with his experience with Salt, and as well as Mr. Thomas Hatch for everything he does for Salt every day of the week. So thank you all for spending some time with us today, and we will look forward to seeing you down the road. Thanks.